Codependency. Can you guys see the screen? Let me know if you can see the screen. Can you see it there, Roxanne?
It's up.
Ah, that's wonderful. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys are like, oh my God, not this topic again. Firstly, not
But it's
this
such
guy
an
again.
important topic.
Such an important topic because not it's crazy because not many people actually realize that in the pursuit of trying to help our loved ones, we actually start developing um an environment which codependency can exist. For those that don't know, I mean, if you pay attention to that picture, I mean, there's our father, alcoholic, in the middle there, and he's sad, and the wife is sad, and the kids are sad, and everybody's just sad because somebody once said it. Alcoholism, drug addiction, just so happens to be a family disease. I know in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, they say that addiction is the only disease that makes you believe that you're only harming yourself. And as much as the addict and the alcoholic may find himself feeling very, very hopeless and useless at the end, it just so happens that the family members of the addict and the alcoholic also suffer similarly. So I hope that this presentation, for those that have done it, it's fresh.
As well. But I'm going to be home in 2 minutes.
Okay. I think it's you, Kate. Can you just mute? Thank you. Um, yeah, as I was saying, I'm hoping that you guys can pick up some fresh new information that you can apply to your own recovery, and we can actually start this journey of healing. So, codependency. What is codependency? Codependency is a dysfunctional relationship pattern that typically involves one person who's excessively reliant on another person for their emotional or physical needs. In this case, we're talking about the addict, while the other person in the relationship assumes the role of the caregiver. In this instance, we're talking about the enabler or the family member. And I know some family members get very upset when the enabling patterns are called out, because how else do you expect me to love my son? How else do you expect me to love my husband, my wife, my daughter, my father, you know? But like I said, it's not an intentional thing that happens um with typically with people that have no choice but to love an addict in any form. The environment and the coping mechanisms and the lack of boundaries just create an environment where such can exist. Let's keep going. So the characteristics of codependency: excessive caretaking. Codependents often prioritize others' needs over their own. Let me know, guys, if this sounds familiar to you at all. Just you can raise your virtual hand if it seems a little bit too familiar. Low self-esteem. They seek validation from external sources. My friends, my family members that I call and I complain about my attitude, and they're like, oh, but you try so hard. You try so hard. I mean, you shouldn't have to go through that. you know, they seek validation from the external sources. Control issues. Codependents may try to control or fix others. Let me know, guys. I saw Lennon put a thumbs up earlier. Let me know if it feels a little bit too familiar. May try to control or fix others. Fear of abandonment. They fear rejection and abandonment. Lack of boundaries, difficulty setting healthy boundaries with their addict. These are just some of the characteristics. Signs of codependency. Social chameleon. You might subtly shift your behavior to better align with your loved one's needs. This adaptability can lead to losing sight of your own preferences and boundaries. Approval seeking, a deep-seated need for approval from others. You may excessively seek validation and feel anxious when you don't receive it. Self-sacrifice. Codependents often prioritize others' needs over their own. They may neglect self-care and well-being to support someone else. That also includes the finances, um, taking out loans just to help the addict with whatever the new story of the day may be. Control issues, codependency may manifest as a need for control. You might try to fix or manage the other person's life, believing it's your responsibility. Hmm. Yeah. Anybody? No thumbs? No hands? Okay. Fear of rejection. Oh, no, no, lack of boundaries. Difficulty setting healthy boundaries. Codependents may struggle to say no or assert their own needs.
It's just before you carry on to the next slide. So for those members that are present today that were here last week, I did a presentation last week on boundaries, and I think the presentation that Utz is doing today with regards to codependency ties in so nicely with the boundaries. And so much of what you went through in the previous slide and now with the signs of codependency, boundaries keep coming up the whole time. So yeah, boundaries and codependency, I think, is something that is so important for us as supporters and loved ones trying to support the addict. And sometimes when we hear these things, it might seem a bit foreign. And I know you mentioned it's, you like asking, anyone agree? Does it sound familiar? And it's difficult to admit a lot of these things. I remember the first time somebody told me that I'm codependent. I was like, what, me? No, definitely not. Can't be. And I actually needed to go have a look at and study up on what codependency is and, how it affects my relationships. And then I couldn't believe that I've been denying it for so long. So, and I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with. You touched on it earlier. We really do believe that what we're doing is in the best interest of our loved one. But there is that saying that sometimes we love them to death. And what we perceive as being good for them and in their best interest often isn't, and is often rather enabling behavior and enabling the addiction. So, and that's the beauty of these kind of presentations is, we can't fix what we don't recognize. And these things, sometimes it's difficult as what it is to sometimes read up on these things and see, oh, that might be me. This gives us the opportunity to start recognizing it and then to start changing some of these behaviors.
Absolutely. I personally believe that in the journey of recovery, one of the biggest gifts is the awareness. I don't have to be diagnosed in any of this, but if I start actually realizing that some of these patterns may actually resonate or even refer directly to me, then maybe there's something to look into. And with that awareness, when I start experiencing it in real time, I can say, oh, I've identified that I'm codependent in this form. Let me try something different. So that awareness gives us the opportunity to actually make different choices. So I do touch a bit on boundaries later, and hopefully, yeah, we can actually give our family here, our Changes family, some more to take home, to think about, and some tools to use.
Yes.
So we're going to keep going.
Please do.
Examples of codependency. Codependency and drug abuse. While codependency does not necessarily occur with drug abuse, it is commonly found in those who have close relationships with people struggling with addiction. An example of that would be partners who both use drugs, both abuse drugs, close adult members and significant others of individuals using drugs, and the children of people who are abusing or addicted to drugs. By the way, when I do my presentation, I consider alcohol to be a drug too, guys. Please make no mistake, it's a very powerful drug. And in some cases, it causes more damage than the other common street drugs that we find. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clarification that alcohol is a very powerful drug, and this also is very much relevant to the story of the alcoholic and people that have no choice but to love them. In summary, codependency resembles an addiction that involves unhealthy behaviors, one-sided relationships, and emotional destructiveness. Seeking professional help and setting healthy boundaries are crucial steps towards breaking free from codependent patterns. So professional help may come in the form of the counselor that you speak to on a regular basis when we're discussing the progress of your loved one in the treatment, or even seeking external counseling. Um, there's also like setting healthy boundaries. Like I said, we're gonna touch on that as we go along this presentation. But it's crucial steps because, as I mentioned earlier, that addiction is actually a family disease. It affects everybody that's involved, and I know you guys have personal experience of that. Um, so the healing from codependency. In codependent relationships, both people can fall into behavioral patterns that reinforce a one-sided dynamic. Essentially, one person is always being selfless, while the other grows accustomed to being coddled. It is important, once the problem is identified, that we start taking the necessary steps towards recovery. There's that quote again. If addiction is a family disease, then recovery is a family action. Um, Healing from codependency. We get to the good stuff now, guys. Hopefully, I won't depress you guys by the time we're done with this presentation. But yeah, healing from codependency begins with knowing the difference between controlling and supporting your partner. That sounds like a good one. Hey, Roxanne?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, when we speak about boundaries as well, and again, boundaries tie into, you know, the codependency subject so well. So I think it's important to make that distinction about where do I begin and or where do I end and where do you begin? So what's my stuff and what's your stuff?
Yep.
You know, often a therapeutic activity that we do is, you know, kind of drawing a circle and putting in that circle what you can control and what you can't control.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever's not inside of that circle, you kind of need to let it go.
Yeah.
And that often is, you know, the behavior of your loved one, their addiction. You know, you need to set rules and you need to set boundaries, but they need to take responsibility. You can't take responsibility for their recovery. So yeah, you need to learn what the difference is between controlling them and supporting them 100%.
Yep. Separating your interests and goals from those of your partner or loved ones. That's basically just saying, okay, this is like Roxanne just mentioned, like what's my responsibility and what's not my responsibility. Where does my contribution to the lifestyle or the relationship or the family unit that we have going on start, and where does my responsibility to the addiction end? You know, being able to draw that line, focusing on asserting your needs. By the way, codependency typically don't feel seen or heard in these environments. They just feel like they're giving and they're giving and they're giving and it won't stop. So to actually say, oh, hold on, I need peace is one way of doing. I need time to myself. I need my time to put together my thoughts. I need to focus on what's happening in my life. How do I get to work? How's that? How how do I get to work? You know, what am I gonna eat? You know, um, just taking care of your own basic needs. You know, identifying and challenging negative thoughts. The negative thoughts would be, I can fix him or her. The negative thoughts could be, I've been such a terrible parent. The negative thoughts could be, I've been such a terrible partner, or I've been such a terrible child. Um, to I'm just sharing some of the examples that I come across when working with people that struggle with codependency. Um, there's always that the greater idea that they're responsible for whatever the addict may be going through, and that's not true. Building your own self-esteem, valuing yourself, and saying this is what's important to me, and this is how I actually need to show up in my life. Because obviously, it's everybody else's responsibility to show up for their own. Instead of taking care of everybody else to take. By the way, if I can't take care of me, then how am I supposed to take care of anybody else? If every single one of my actions is to my own detriment, how do I show up with love and compassion and empathy? and be able to commit to this to this relationship. Yeah, is there anything you'd like to add there?
No, I think a lot of these things also come down to communication. So it's really important to sit down as a family as well and speak about some of these things. So, you know, if I look at point number 2, separating your interests and goals from those of your partner or your loved one. So, you know, I think sometimes there are common goals and it's good to have those. And it's good to work together as those, but also to recognize that people might not do it at the same pace. You know, you might do it a bit slower or they might do it a bit slower. And again, you know, where do you end and where does the next person begin? So have some of those things that are joined, but it's also very important to have those things that are separate, to grow together, but also to grow as individuals. So yeah, the next one is focusing on and asserting your needs. Again, that comes down to communication. And in the throes of addiction, we so often forget our own needs. And it's like they don't even exist anymore. And we feel overwhelmed and we feel, you know, that everything is just a little bit too much. And so easily resentment starts because of that. And it's kind of like it's almost too late when you realize it. You know, it's too much, and there's anger and there's resentment, and you know, all of a sudden you're just not getting around to the things that matter to you anymore. So again, you know, when you hear these kind of presentations, it's important to do a bit of homework and just do a bit of a self-check and say, okay, wait, you know, what are some of those things that maybe used to matter to me that have just kind of slipped along the way? You know, whether it's, you know, seeing friends, going to church, a hobby or interest that you had. And it's important to get back to what matters to you. Like it said, you know, if we're not looking after ourselves, we definitely can't look after anyone else. You know, we need to give from a cup that's full. So we need to make sure that our cup is full. And it's okay to say no. Again, coming down to boundaries. You know, we often teach the guys that no is not a swear word, and no is a full sentence. So, you know, if something is starting to invade on your space, or you don't feel comfortable with it, or you feel like, no, this shouldn't be my problem, it's okay to say no, and to, yeah, no is enough. You don't have to feel like you need to justify yourself or, you know, give an excuse. And I think that's another big thing of codependency, is because we feel responsible for the other person's emotions. So when we say no, you know, they might get angry or they might get upset. And we want to try our best to avoid that, because, you know, maybe in the past, the person would go and they would use on those feelings. They would use that as an excuse. So we kind of don't want to upset them. You know, we don't want to say no, because what if they do get angry and what if they do get upset? So again, and I repeat this often, but it comes down to that principle of, where do I end and where do you begin? So you need to assert yourself. You need to say what's important to you. And if you feel like this isn't your thing to do, and or your loved one is expecting something that isn't your responsibility, you need to be able to say no. And unfortunately, what you do with that, that's their stuff. And as a codependent, that's a really difficult thing to accept. We're like, no, but how can that be? You know, I can't make them feel like that. And again, you can't make them feel anything. They choose how to feel. You simply saying what's important for you. What they do after that is it's really up to them.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Roxanne. Go on to the next slide. Tips for dealing with codependency. One of the cool things is to ask yourself, am I trying to support or manage? If you think you know what's best for the other person, recognize that you can't control others. In many cases, letting your addict do things for themselves will give them the space to grow and help them build a healthier relationship with you. You know, and I think it's the Al-Anons. They like to say that this disease of alcoholism, I didn't create it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. Am I trying to support or am I trying to manage? It's really important to ask yourself because it's not you that's handing out the drinks or handing out the street drugs in your home. I'd assume the majority of you guys have been trying to have healthy living environments so that people can actually grow and live and call home. Um, it's unfortunate that this disease of addiction manages to fight to infiltrate into each and every single one of you's homes and into your lives. But then there is a choice to be able to say, okay, I can't allow that. And that's why we're giving you these tips. Am I trying to support or am I trying to manage? Another one is to focus on yourself. Plan to reserve time and energy for your wants and your needs. Take time to relax, especially after accomplishing a difficult task. A difficult task could be a tough day at work. you know, I know that some people's parents feel like maybe they're after work they turn into firemen because they're just always putting out fires. That's not how life should be. After a difficult day at work, maybe it'll be nice to just relax. Engage in the things that you want to do, even if it's a solo activity like reading your favorite book. um, Roxanne just mentioned going to church, participating in the Bible study, um, exercise, prioritize your own health, prioritize your own diet, and prioritize your own sleep, and therefore prioritizing your own sanity. These are important things because it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of any individual to be a participant in this disease of addiction. And I know some of you guys are like, but I'm not the one that's using drugs. If I'm managing and I'm enabling, then chances are I'm also a participant in this cycle. So prioritize your own health, your own diet, your own sleep, and your own sanity. By the way, I didn't say this at the beginning, guys. I hope you guys are taking notes. There's gonna be a test at the end of this. I'm gonna ask each and every one of you in my spot quiz, what is codependency? The winner will get a lunch bar. How's that? We like lunch bars. We like lunch bars. Anyway, back to the presentation. I was joking about the test, but take notes, guys. Take notes. um, Tips for dealing with codependency: setting simple boundaries, recognize your needs, understand that your needs are valid and deserve attention. Prioritize self-care alongside caring for others. Woo, that's a tough one. Identify triggers. Notice situations or behaviors that cause discomfort or stress. These are opportunities to set boundaries. Nobody likes to do the difficult work. Mind you, the alcoholic is going to have to say no to alcohol every single day. And when they come home and they're frustrated and they're like, oh, I'm triggered, then you're like, you should be able to say, you're triggering me. Call your sponsor. Call your counselor. Go to a meeting, do something. You're affecting me. Your mood is affecting me. Like I said, these difficult situations are opportunities to set boundaries. And my experience has been that the more that I show up for the difficult situations with putting my best foot forward, it gets easier to actually exist when the drama surfaces. Practice saying no. Hey, Roxanne, no is not a
Not a swear word, and it's a full sentence.
no is a full sentence.
Do I get my lunch bar?
We'll talk about it tomorrow at work, okay? Or actually, no. You see, I just set a boundary.
Fair enough.
Yeah. No, practice saying no. It's okay to decline requests or invitations. Be assertive but respectful. So that was not a respectful no. I apologize, Roxanne. We'll discuss your lunch bar tomorrow. How's that? Tips for dealing with codependency: set in simple, communicate clearly, express your feelings. That's what Roxanne was talking about earlier. Express your feelings and your limitations openly. Use I statements to avoid blame. I don't like how you spoke to me yesterday. Um, I don't appreciate you arriving home late without having to let me know where you've been. Um, I don't think you hanging around those people that you used to drink with is a good idea. I can't give you money to go hang out with the people that you used to drink and do drugs with. Um, those are good. Those are good examples. Hey, hey, Roxanne.
They're great.
Yeah.
And I agree. There are statements, and that's something that we also, again, try and teach people that are in treatment with us to take responsibility. And it comes down to what we said earlier in terms of like trying to control or trying to manage. So when we do set boundaries, after we set the boundary, we can't control what happens after that, but we can control our stuff. So how we feel and how we communicate. So, I feel disrespected when you break curfew and don't come home at the agreed time. I would appreciate it if you could be home at 10 o'clock. And if not, then, you have to find somewhere else to stay. Or and again, last week we also touched on even being able to communicate some of those boundaries while your loved one is in treatment. So for instance, I feel unappreciated when you spend 500 Rand a week in your tuck shop. I would appreciate it if you would manage your finances more appropriately. If you do spend 500 Rand a week on your tuck shop, I'm simply not going to top it up anymore because this is what I'm able to afford per week. So all of those things are boundaries. And again, for us that struggle with codependency, if we do get that phone call in the middle of the week to say, I've run out of tuck shop, please pay in tuck shop, I can't buy cigarettes. We want to say, okay, shame, he or she can't go without cigarettes. They're going through a lot of stuff. I need to pay in some more money so they can get those cigarettes. And we shouldn't feel like that. We need to, that's again where the codependency comes in. We put down the boundary from the beginning so that our loved ones knew what the consequences were going to be if they didn't stick to that boundary. So by us constantly then negating on the boundaries that we have set, it enables that behavior, because guaranteed next week, Wednesday, you're going to get the same phone call if you topped it up, because they have learned that if they do X, Y, and Z, this is the outcome that they're going to get. So again, you need to separate yourself from their feelings. That's your boundary and you need to stick to that. So yeah.
Thank you so much,
Sorry, I
Roxanne.
know I went slightly off of the I statement, but
No,
it's about setting those boundaries and being consistent.
yeah. And yeah, actually, that's a very valuable contribution to the discussion. Boundaries, guys, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. If you let a person cross your boundaries, you're only opening yourself up to more of the manipulation. So it's really important that once I set the boundary, I actually stick to it. Um, the second part is to learn to prioritize, balance your own well-being with supporting others. We've said it many times in this. Where does my support start and where does my management end? Where do I start? Where does my responsibility end? I need to be able to identify what I can do and what I can't. And if I can't, it's okay to say I can't. Set limits on how much you can give without neglecting yourself. That's an important one, especially when it comes to finances. But we might even neglect the emotional side, like even the emotions. How much can I give without neglecting myself? Self-check regularly. Reflect on your boundaries periodically. I know that the guys in treatment, they're constantly asked to reflect daily on how their day has been. So they journal. They do it, they write in their diary how their day has been. What? Can you guys see that?
Yep.
I just got an error message. Okay, no, it's fine, it's fine. As long as we're still here. Um, as I was saying, like the journaling is an important part of everybody's recovery. Just to see how we're doing today. These are high values for me. And once I've identified all my high values, this is where I can't actually let the line be crossed. And every time I protect this line, I actually feel better about myself as well, you know? Um, so self-checking regularly, adjust as needed to maintain balance. So sometimes we try to set these boundaries, and it's a huge uh, 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 creates a lot of chaos, a lot of drama, and then we have to double back to the drawing board and ask myself, like, how could I have done this better? Avoiding the fight, avoiding the chaos, and what did I take on what that's not mine, and what should I where should I actually stand steadfast, you know? So certain things that we pick up in our recovery, because it's not like we're born well-adjusted human beings. We have to learn these things, and thank God that there is this opportunity right now where there's so much to actually start working on. Because then, if it was just perfect, then there'd be no need for recovery. Unfortunately for us, we're already in this place on a Tuesday night at 6:36, and you guys are listening to me. We're already here, guys. It's too late. But anyway, remember, boundaries about self-respect and maintaining emotional health. You deserve to create space for your own needs and your own feelings. Um, uh, more tips for dealing with codependency. Setting boundaries with an addict is crucial for both the addict's recovery and the family member's well-being. Here are some of examples of good boundary setting in this context. No substance use allowed. Yeah, that sounds like a good one. Hey, Roxanne, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't appreciate you finishing the sleeping pills in this house, you know. I don't think it's a good idea for you to be taking sleeping pills when you come home or when you wake up in the morning. Hey? Um,
Mhm.
I don't want any alcohol in my house. I don't want you smoking any marijuana in my house. Or else you will leave. And if it's not just, then I will leave. But you don't have to be in that environment. I love you, but I cannot allow any drugs or alcohol in the house. If you choose to use, you'll need to find somewhere else to stay. I think that's a good one.
Just just to add to that, I
Yeah.
think it was 2 weeks ago where we had a family member share. And that was such a powerful message. And, you know, two things that she shared that I just want to add to this is um, you need to decide what your boundaries are. So boundaries are a very personal thing. And you need to decide what your boundary is going to be in terms of, especially when it comes to alcohol in the home. So just because your loved one is in recovery, doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you are and that you're no longer going to consume alcohol. But some of us might decide, you know what, from now on, this is going to be an alcohol-free home. So then you need to communicate those boundaries with the other family members or, friends that might come and visit. We love you dearly and you're welcome to bring your Coca-Cola and your Coke Zero and come and have a good time. But unfortunately, this is an alcohol-free home. Um, or maybe that might not be across the board, but maybe, when you're having a lunch at your home where your addicted loved one now in recovery is present. And initially you feel, we're not going to do that. And this is something we also do communicate with your loved ones that are in, is that they also need to be able to set boundaries around this topic. And especially, like it's mentioned, when it comes to a lot of these substances that have become socially acceptable, in particular alcohol. Um, Unfortunately, marijuana is also falling under that category now. And then medication and things around the house. So yeah, what are your rules and what are your boundaries going to be? And you need to enforce that from your side. Um, yeah, I can't remember now what my second point was, but it will come to me later. So I apologize for that. But
Thank you for
again,
that.
just boundaries are a personal thing, and you need to decide what your bottom line is here, and you need to stick to that bottom line.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, the next one will be financial boundaries. I'll not provide you with money, which could be used to support your addiction. I'm willing to help you with your necessities, but I cannot finance your substance use or your gambling, whatever the disease may be. I don't want to participate in you killing yourself anymore. Um, that's a good boundary to have. I think so.
Mm.
There's emotional boundaries. It hurts me when
Sorry,
you're under the influence. Yeah.
sorry, I just want to come back to the financial boundary. So again, I spoke earlier about the tuck shop, for instance, but that's a brilliant time to start practicing some of those financial boundaries. Um, you know,
Yeah.
it's a real thing. And, you know, you can ask your loved one that's an addiction. The value of money is just something that is completely forgotten. And addicts often don't think of money in terms of monetary value, but rather in terms of how much how much is this going to get me in terms of my drug of choice,
Yeah.
whether that be, cocaine, crack, alcohol, sleeping tablets, whatever the case is. So yeah, it's important to start learning the value of money.
Mm. Mm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Emotional boundaries. It hurts me when you're under the influence. I need to protect my emotional health. So I will remove myself from situations where you are using. I know that one's a tough one because, like I said, we typically want to show up as rescuers, firemen, and protectors, and etc. But the truth is, we didn't choose to use on that day in particular, you know, and that the addict made their own decision, and it's hard to say, but the consequences are for them to bear. Yeah, physical boundaries. If you come home intoxicated, I will not engage in conversation with you until you're sober. This is for my safety and your accountability. That's a good one, no? Yeah?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so physical boundary has to do with your physical space, not just actual physical touch, but
Yeah.
even your physical space. So that one very much pertains to physical boundaries. Again, it's your physical space is also your home. So what will you tolerate and what won't you tolerate in your home across the board? Not just, being intoxicated or not being intoxicated, but also in terms of behavior. Yeah, like I said, bottom lines. You need to decide what those bottom lines are,
Mm,
and you need to enforce that.
mm, mm. Treatment encouragement. I support your recovery and will assist you in finding treatment options. However, I'll not tolerate behaviors that enable your addiction. So when the counselor's calling and saying, "Hey, your kid is here and he's doing, he's hitting the roof here," you know, sometimes the treatment professionals do need the family support to actually say, "Yes, we're going to set boundaries and we're going to stick to them," and not fall into the manipulation. Um, the mere fact that the addict had to show up with us means that the problem is actually more serious than what the addict believes. And it's probably even more serious than what you guys believe as well. Even though you guys are going through it. Not to say you're not going through it. It's just uh I personally have found that still waters run deep, you know. And
And
it's
it's,
yeah,
I, I think the emotional boundary that was just on the previous slide also ties in really well with this one.
yeah,
I think the first way that the addict tries to get through to us is by hitting that nerve, those emotions, and they've learned really well how to do that.
yeah,
Exactly which button they need to push to get a
yep,
certain reaction.
yep,
And if they feel that they can make you feel anyway, then yeah, they'll play on those emotions.
yep,
Um, we often hear, but you don't know how difficult this is for me. It's really difficult. Like I can't do this, or I miss you, mom. I really need to come home. I promise it'll be fine when I get home.
yeah,
I can't do this. This is killing me.
yeah,
Um, and when we hear those kind of things, it's even more difficult to draw those lines. But again, it's got to do with our emotional boundaries. It's
yeah,
unfortunately a process that they need to go through. And yeah, we need to be able to say, you know, we know this is a difficult process, but we do know that you have the necessary support that you need there and the professional help. And I'm going to support you during this process, but I'm not going to enable you leaving or, you know, giving up on this process. So I think those emotional boundaries and that one with regards to treatment tie in quite nicely together.
Yeah, absolutely. And consistency, guys, consistency. These boundaries are not negotiable. Consistently breaking them will result in consequences such as limited contact until you seek help. That's a great way to set that one. Because like we just mentioned earlier, is that the minute I consider boundary, here's a perfect example. I consider boundary to not speak to hypothetically an ex, right? And because she like really doesn't make me feel loved and whatever the story may be, right? And I just don't want to speak to this person anymore. But now if I'm texting her, unblocking her at 10 p.m. and saying, hey, how are you? You see, I'm the one that's throwing my back in the lion's pit, in the lion's den. You know, so as soon as I set a boundary, and it takes a lot of thought to identify what my boundary is. And then after that thought, it also takes tremendous courage to set it. And it takes consistency to keep that boundary up. Remember, the boundary I set is there to protect my peace, my health, my sleep, and my sanity. The boundary is not for the other person. The boundary is for me. Now we're gonna open it up for questions. Do you guys have any questions?
Just while everyone is trying to kind of process a little bit and get their questions, I just want to add to that last slide again, Utz, if you don't mind going back to that one.
Okay. This one.
That one. Yeah. So again, no, the one just before the question slide, Utz.
Okay.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So initially, because boundaries is something that's often so foreign to us, when we set that boundary, it feels really strange, and we question and we doubt, you know, did I do the right thing? And that's a normal reaction. But it's also spoke quite a bit about introspection. That's why it's so important for us to do the necessary introspection to know what are your values, what are your morals, what are you willing to stand for, what are you not willing to stand for, what are your bottom lines, what are you going to allow, you know, within your space, with regards to your emotions, etc. So that when you do set those boundaries, that you're confident, and that you then don't need to backtrack, even though you've got this internal dialogue going on that's maybe making you doubt a little bit. But with time, it will get easier. The first few times, like, because it's so foreign, it will feel strange, and there will be some doubt. But consistency is something else that Utz mentioned, and we need to be consistent with our boundaries. The matters that we set boundaries on, but also, continuously doing that. And again, the family might also react a bit strange, like, but where's this coming from? You know, it used to be okay in the past. Why is it not allowed now? And again, just be consistent in those boundaries and keep putting it up, and eventually it'll become a safe space for everyone. And no is a full sentence. You don't have to justify why. You know, yes, maybe it was acceptable in the past because you didn't know better, and purely because you thought that what you were doing was right, but you've learned during this process that it's not necessarily the healthy option. And that's why it's no, and you don't have to justify that. So yeah, be consistent and just keep at it.
Yeah, I agree fully with Roxanne. And another thing is that you know, it's almost like for the amount of years or months, whatever amount of time that we've been living in this toxic pattern of addiction, where somebody's using and then the consequences are affecting the loved ones, or they're affecting the finances of the family, they're affecting the living conditions, they're affecting the food, they're affecting the, you know, it almost becomes normal in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says to the alcoholics, it seems that the alcoholic life seems to be the only normal one. And if we replace that word alcoholic as they do in Al-Anon with family, to the family, it seems that the alcoholic life becomes the only, it seems to be the only normal one. So when we come into a space of recovery, um, those the ability to set a boundary and say, actually, I do value my life and how we go about. And I do value this family, and I do value this household, and I do value my sanity. It's gonna feel different. Like I said, just like when the alcoholic is and the addict is gonna have to turn down drugs every single day when they're out there in the streets reintegrating with society. It's gonna be something new, but it's not just them that's changing. It's us as well as the loved ones. We're also learning how to exist in this space, you know? And I often tell the patients, like, we shouldn't look at it like it's some kind of like a miserable consequence, you know? We're actually in a very new space where this life that we're creating, it could be way better than the one that we just survived. It could be better
100%.
than it could be better than the one that we needed to escape through the use of alcohol and drugs. This life that we're working on today could be way more worthwhile than the one that we're building today. And it starts with these healthy practices. It starts with identifying where my issues are. It starts with learning how to show up. It starts with learning how to show up for myself. It starts with learning how to be honest. It starts with vulnerability and asking out and asking for help and doing the difficult work, especially when it, because nobody likes to do the hard work. But the truth is, it's necessary. It's necessary if there's any healing and recovery that's going to happen. But like I said, guys, is there anything you'd like to add, Roxanne?
No, I agree with you. I think, if you do the hard work, there's so much rewards at the end of that. And sometimes when we're in the middle of it, it's so difficult to see that. But, and Utz, I'm sure you would agree, but for us who have worked with this over many years, we have seen those rewards. That's healthy boundaries and healthy relationships, just the wonderful rewards that come from that. So, Utz, we have one comment over here from Lennon. Lennon said, I found the codependency triangle very helpful in understanding the impact of codependency. Lennon, I think if I recall correctly, you're quite a fan of Melody Beattie's books. I might be incorrect, but that's how I recall. And if you're speaking about the codependency triangle, it's also often referred to as the victim triangle or the drama triangle, where there's three different roles that constantly get played: the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim. So yeah, I think that's quite a bit to unpack in the little time that we have left. So it's maybe just something we can share with the team, something that we can maybe discuss in future, either as part of your presentation or another presentation, because yes, I think that is very, very valuable to have that information. And again, we provide this format for as a means of education, to educate and to support, but we also strongly encourage you as family members to also grow within this process. And if you can, to go to meetings like Al-Anon and Narcanon, and there's some brilliant literature out there. So the one that I refer to now, Melody Beattie's books. So I think her first one was Codependent No More. And subsequently, I think she's released 2 or 3 other books. I know she also has a blog and a website where she posts like daily inspiration, specifically with people who struggle with codependency. So yeah, get involved with things like that. And on this topic specifically, I think Melody Beattie is just phenomenal in terms of her knowledge around the subject. It's something she's been working with for a very, very long time, and very sound advice. I think the things that she teaches there, it's practical, and I think it's something most of us can relate to. There's another comment from Trevor. Friends who have been there long term not happy with friends, how do we set the boundaries with the friends or stop it? So I'm assuming, Trevor, that you're referring to your loved ones' friends and perhaps relationships that they want to continue, relationships that you don't necessarily think are healthy relationships. What would be your feedback on that?
Like I said, the boundary would be that I don't appreciate you still hanging around people who you use drugs with. I don't think it's a good idea to be hanging around people who you drink alcohol with, or who you go gambling with, whatever the addictive pattern that may be exhibited. And for the addict, in most cases, they find that like it's a very stern boundary to set. But even if they were to speak to their counselor, or speak to their friend in recovery, or speak to their sponsor, the same advice would be the advice would be the same. Like if you used drugs or drank with this person, it's probably not a good idea in your first year of recovery to even be around these people. And then the longer that you can actually participate in your recovery and experience some healing in that, and find yourself not having to go through cravings when you face the difficulty, obsessing to drink, um, then it's probably not a good idea to be around those people in the first place. That's how I would personally do it. I don't know how about you, Roxanne.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, again, it's about setting your boundary, and how your loved one responds after that is something that's out of your control. And again, that's where we need to differentiate between supporting them and trying to control it. So, by voicing your concerns, again, using I statements. So I feel that these relationships are unhealthy, and I feel that these are the reasons why they are perhaps unhealthy. So, really trying to communicate from your side, the way that you feel and the way that you perceive. Try to not do blame. So you become a bad person when you with them and they are terrible people, and try and focus on what you see and what you perceive and how you feel, and try and set those boundaries with them. And um, again, in terms of your personal space, you can decide what it is that you allow and what you don't allow. So, I will not be supporting this friendship. I will not allow them in my home, and those kinds of things. And if it is something that you feel is really toxic to them, and they're not responding to what you're saying, then it's also something that you can definitely discuss with their counselors if they are still in treatment, so that we can become aware of it and perhaps advise you on it, and also perhaps that's something that needs to be dealt with in treatment.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Trevor.